The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Towering above the assembly stood Councillor Jurek, his amphibious skin glistening under the chamber's artificial light. His sharp eyes scanned the gathered representatives of the galactic species. Beside him, General Strux, a towering reptilian figure with dark scales and a perpetual scowl, stood impatiently, his hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial weapon. "Enough discussion," Jurek declared, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. "The Terran Empire has avoided galactic matters for too long. They hide behind diplomacy, trade agreements, and their isolation. We need their resources. If they do not join us in the fight against the Crumb, we will dismantle their empire piece by piece." Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. The Crumb, a relentless war machine of bioengineered terror, had decimated entire systems. The Council's forces, while formidable, were stretched thin. The Terrans, with their rich resources and technological advancements, had remained neutral, quietly building their own strength in the shadows. But now the Council believed it was time to force their hand. "Humans are weak," General Strux sneered, his cold eyes flashing with disdain. "They haven't fought a galactic war in over a millennium. They will surrender the moment they realize what they're up against." Councillor Jurek nodded, his confidence unshaken. "We will issue an ultimatum. Either they join us in this war, or we crush them. Their peaceful existence will crumble under the weight of our fleets." A representative from a smaller system hesitated, her slender form trembling as she spoke. "But what if they resist? There are rumors that the humans are not as weak as we believe. Their military is a mystery. We've never seen it in action." Jurek waved her off dismissively. "They are cowards. Their reliance on diplomacy proves that. They've spent centuries avoiding conflict, hiding behind treaties. We have nothing to fear." The council chamber buzzed once more, but there was no true dissent. The decision was made, and the ultimatum was prepared. It was sent out across the galaxy, reaching the Terran Empire's homeworld, Terra Prime, within hours. It was a message that dripped with arrogance and veiled threats, demanding the Terrans take up arms in the war against the Crumb or face annihilation. As the Council waited for the Terrans' response, there was no doubt in their minds that the humans would comply. The Terran Empire had no history of military prowess, and their reluctance to join the galactic stage had long been seen as cowardice. "We'll have their response within days," General Strux grunted, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin, "and it'll be the response of a species that knows its place." 2 days passed. The Council gathered once again in the chamber, eager to hear the humans' reply. The holographic screen flickered to life, displaying the symbol of the Terran Empire. A voice followed, calm, steady, and devoid of fear. "We accept. Prepare." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Jurek's smile faltered, replaced by a creeping unease. General Strux's eyes narrowed, his claws tapping nervously against the armrest of his chair. "What did they just say?" Jurek muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. General Strux straightened, his bravado suddenly slipping. "This isn't the response of a frightened species," he said, his voice tight with tension. "They're preparing for war." For the first time, the Galactic Council began to realize they might have underestimated the Terran Empire. The quiet hum of the Terran Command Center was in stark contrast to the panic brewing within the Galactic Council. Admiral Yara Kane stood at the heart of the room, her dark eyes scanning the data streams that filled the air around her. Tall, with short-cropped hair and an aura of unshakable confidence, she had been preparing for this moment her entire career. The ultimatum from the Galactic Council had come as no surprise. In fact, it was expected. "Admiral," the Council's message was received and decoded. Captain Mira Thorne, Kane's second-in-command, reported. Her voice was calm, but there was a spark of anticipation in her tone. "Just as we thought, they'd expect us to surrender or be crushed." Kane smiled faintly, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the edge of the command console. "They think we're still the same Terra from centuries ago. Diplomats hiding behind treaties. They have no idea what we're capable of. Thorne nodded in agreement. It's clear they've never considered us a threat. That will be their downfall. Admiral Kane turned to the communications officer, her voice firm and direct. Send our response. 3 words. We accept. Prepare. The officer complied, his fingers dancing across the console, transmitting the message across the vast expanse of space. As the words left Terra Prime, there was no hint of desperation, no plea for negotiation. Just a calm, calculated acceptance of war. We've waited long enough, Kane said, her eyes narrowing as she gazed at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Council thinks they're pushing us into a corner, but they've handed us the perfect excuse to reveal our true strength. For centuries, the Terran Empire had maintained an outward facade of peace and diplomacy. They had kept their military operations hidden, focusing on technology, exploration, and strategic alliances without engaging in the conflicts that ravaged the rest of the galaxy. But beneath that surface, the Terrans had been preparing, quietly, efficiently. They had watched as other empires rose and fell, studying the mistakes of those who had rushed into war without foresight. Now, with the Galactic Council's ultimatum, the mask was coming off. Admiral, Captain Thorne said, her voice growing more serious, the Council will likely send scouts to monitor our movements. They'll want to gauge our strength before the full engagement. How do you want to handle it? Kane's lips curled into a confident smile. Let them watch. Let them think they're getting the upper hand. But when we arrive, we'll show them just how wrong they were. The Terran fleet began to mobilize, their ships powering up and taking formation. The Resolute, Kane's flagship, was at the forefront, a massive warship bristling with advanced weaponry that few in the galaxy had ever seen. The fleet, while smaller than the Council's, was a force of precision and unmatched technological prowess. It wasn't about numbers. It was about efficiency and overwhelming firepower at the perfect moment. Captain Thorne stood beside Admiral Kane, a subtle excitement in her posture. We've kept our secrets well, Admiral. The Council has no idea what they're about to face. Kane's eyes gleamed with determination. It's time to show the galaxy what the Terran Empire really is. No more hiding. No more diplomacy. They want war. We'll give them war. The countdown to departure began, the fleet's engines humming with power as they prepared to leave Terra Prime's orbit. The calm efficiency of the crew stood in stark contrast to the chaos undoubtedly brewing within the Galactic Council. The humans have been underestimated for far too long. As the Terran fleet surged into hyperspace, Admiral Kane stood tall at the helm, watching the stars blur into streaks of light. They wanted us in the war, Kane murmured to herself. Now, they'll wish they never sent that message. The Galactic Council's fleet had assembled at the designated rendezvous point, a vast stretch of space on the outskirts of the Nesta sector. Warships from a dozen different species hovered in the void, ready to strike at the Crumb, whose presence had been detected not far beyond the system's borders. The tension among the Council's forces was palpable. They had expected the Terran fleet to arrive by now, but hours had passed, and there was no sign of humanity's presence. General Strux, his reptilian eyes narrowed in frustration, paced back and forth on the bridge of his flagship. "Where are they?" he growled. "They accepted our terms. They said they would be here." Councillor Jurek, who was overseeing the preparations from a command station nearby, attempted to remain calm, though his own nerves were beginning to fray. Perhaps they're mustering their forces from a distant system. The Terran Empire spans multiple sectors. They should have been prepared already. Strux snapped, his scaled fist slamming into the console. "We can't afford delays. The Crumb could strike at any moment." Just as he finished speaking, a sudden alarm blared across the bridge. "Incoming vessels." The tactical officer shouted, his amphibious skin glowing faintly with stress. "It's the Terran fleet." The screen flickered to life, revealing the Terran ships emerging from hyperspace. For a moment, there was stunned silence. The Council had expected a small fleet, a token show of force from the humans, perhaps a few vessels to placate the Council's demands. What they saw instead sent a ripple of shock through the entire command center. Ship after ship materialized in the void, bristling with weapons and armor. These were not the sleek, diplomatic vessels the Council had imagined. The Terran warships were massive, dark, and utilitarian, built for a singular purpose: war. Their hulls gleamed with reinforced plating, angular and sharp, designed not for beauty but for destruction. Each ship carried more firepower than some entire fleets the Council had encountered in the past. At the front of the formation was the Resolute, Admiral Kane's flagship. It dwarfed the other vessels in size and presence, its silhouette casting a long shadow across the Council fleet. "My gods," someone whispered from the back of the bridge. "They're not just here to assist, they're here to lead." General Strux's jaw clenched as he stared at the screen, his arrogance faltering. This is more than we anticipated." Councillor Jurek's eyes were wide, his voice barely a murmur. "They were hiding this all along." Before anyone could speak further, a transmission request flashed across the communication array. "Incoming message from the Terran flagship," the communications officer reported, his voice trembling slightly. "Put it through," Strux barked, trying to regain control of his emotions. The screen shifted to display the image of Admiral Yara Kane, seated calmly on the bridge of the Resolute. Her presence was commanding, her expression unreadable as she addressed the Council's fleet. "This is Admiral Yara Kane of the Terran Empire," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We have arrived as promised. We stand ready to engage the Crumb alongside the Galactic Council." There was a pause, a heavy silence that filled the Council's command center. It was not just Kane's words that unsettled them, but the sheer confidence in her tone. She spoke as if the entire situation was already under her control, as if the Terran Empire had been waiting for this moment to reveal its true power. General Strux forced a smile, though it was strained. "Admiral Kane, we welcome your forces. You've brought quite the fleet. It's more than we anticipated." Kane's gaze remained steady. "We believe in being prepared, General. The Crumb are a formidable enemy, and underestimation would be a fatal mistake." Strux nodded, though his unease grew with every passing second. "Yes, of course. We appreciate your readiness." Admiral Kane's face didn't betray a hint of doubt or hesitation. "We'll follow your lead, General. But understand this, humanity does not enter wars lightly. Now that we are here, we intend to end this conflict swiftly and decisively." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Council's officers in stunned silence. General Strux stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. There was something deeply unsettling about the Terran fleet's arrival, something far beyond their numbers or firepower. It was the way Admiral Kane had spoken, calm, confident, and utterly in control. Councillor Jurek, still shaken, leaned towards Strux. "We may have misjudged them," he said quietly, his voice filled with doubt. "They're not the weaklings we thought they were." Strux's claws tapped nervously on the armrest of his chair. "No," he muttered under his breath, "they're not." As the Terran ships moved into formation alongside the Council's fleet, an unspoken shift of power had taken place. The humans were no longer a mere ally in this war. They were the force that could tip the scales. And as the shadow of the Terran fleet loomed over the Council's warships, one thing became abundantly clear. The Galactic Council had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. The void of space crackled with tension as the Galactic Council's fleet hovered at the edge of the Nestor sector, waiting for the inevitable clash with the Crumb. The massive bioengineered ships of the enemy had been detected just beyond the system's borders, their approach swift and unrelenting. The Council's forces, which had been confident only days before, now watched in anxious silence as the Terran fleet formed a protective line alongside them. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Kane stood calmly, her eyes locked on the tactical displays showing the advancing Crumb fleet. Their ships, organic monstrosities pulsing with bioluminescent energy, moved with eerie speed and purpose. The Crom were known for their brutal tactics, using acid-based weaponry and bioengineered parasites to overwhelm their enemies. It was a fight the Council had been struggling to win for decades. But Kane was unshaken. "Captain Thorne, all systems ready?" she asked, her voice steady as ever. "Yes, Admiral," Thorne replied, her posture rigid with anticipation. "Weapons are fully charged, shields at maximum. The fleet is prepared to engage on your command." Kane's fingers drummed lightly on the console as she considered their next move. "We'll let the Council make the first move. Once they're fully engaged, we'll show them what the Terran Empire can do." As if on cue, the Council fleet began to shift into attack formation. General Strux's voice came over the shared communication channel, gruff and commanding. "All ships, prepare for engagement. The Crom are almost within range. Hold nothing back." The Council warships powered up, their weapons charging with a telltale hum of energy preparing to be unleashed. The tension was almost unbearable as the Crom's grotesque ships surged forward, their spore-filled projectiles already launching toward the Council's front lines. "Open fire," Strux bellowed. The void lit up with the fury of battle. Beams of energy and volleys of plasma fire streaked toward the enemy, slamming into the Crom ships with violent explosions. But the Crom retaliated quickly, their bioengineered weapons spewing clouds of corrosive spores and acid, latching onto the Council's ships and eating through their hulls. The chaos was immediate. The Council's forces struggled to hold the line as the Crom's relentless assault pushed them back. Ship after ship was struck by the alien weaponry, hulls breaching and shields failing under the onslaught. The Crom didn't fight with tactics. They fought with overwhelming ferocity, sacrificing themselves to inflict as much damage as possible. "Admiral Kane," Captain Thorne said urgently, "the Council fleet is taking heavy losses. If we don't act soon, they'll be overrun." Kane remained calm, her eyes tracking every movement on the tactical screen. She knew this moment would come. The Council had never truly understood the nature of the Crom or the level of force needed to stop them. They had underestimated both the enemy and the Terrans. "Now," Kane said quietly, her command cutting through the tension like a blade, "engage the fleet." With those words, the Terran armada surged forward, breaking formation and moving with surgical precision toward the heart of the Crom fleet. Their movements were flawless, each ship executing maneuvers that had been practiced for years, even decades, in preparation for this kind of conflict. The Council officers watched in stunned silence as the Terran warships unleashed a barrage of firepower unlike anything they had ever seen. The void erupted with a new intensity as the Terran weapons cut through the Crom vessels with devastating accuracy. While the Council had relied on brute force, the Terrans attacked with precision, targeting the Crom ships' weak points and disabling their critical systems with unnerving efficiency. "By the stars," Councillor Jurek whispered from the bridge of his own ship. "What are they doing?" General Strux, his eyes wide with shock, could only watch as the Terrans systematically dismantled the Crom forces. It wasn't just the sheer volume of firepower, it was the methodical, calculated nature of their attack. Every move was planned, every shot was precise. The Crom ships were being torn apart, their biological weapons rendered useless against the superior tactics and technology of the Terran Empire. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Kane remained impassive, her focus unbreakable. "Shift to secondary attack pattern," she ordered. "Target their command vessels. We end this now." The Terran ships adjusted their positions in perfect synchronization, focusing their firepower on the Crom's largest and most heavily armored ships. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles slammed into the enemy vessels, piercing their organic hulls and causing them to implode in brilliant flashes of light. The Crom's infamous resilience was crumbling before the Terrans' relentless assault. The Council's fleet, witnessing the destruction of their enemy at the hands of the humans, could only follow in awe. Where they had struggled, the Terrans seemed to be in complete control. What had taken the Council years to merely survive, the Terrans were ending in a matter of hours. "Admiral Kane, the Crom forces are in full retreat," Captain Thorne reported, her voice filled with the thrill of victory. "They're pulling back to the outer system. We've won." Kane allowed herself a small smile, her eyes still locked on the tactical display. "Good, let them run. But this isn't over. Prepare the fleet for pursuit." As the Terran ships regrouped, ready to chase down the retreating Crom, the Council's officers were left in stunned silence. The arrogance they had felt toward humanity was gone, replaced by a dawning realization of the true power they had allied with. "They've been hiding this all along," General Strux muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. "The humans, they're far more dangerous than we ever imagined." The aftermath of the battle left the Galactic Council's fleet in a state of shock and awe. What had started as a desperate defense against the Crom had turned into a demonstration of the Terran Empire's military prowess, a force far beyond anything the Council had anticipated. The battered remains of the Crom fleet limped away from the battle zone, retreating into the outer reaches of the sector, while the Terran ships, seemingly untouched, regrouped with calm efficiency. On the bridge of the Council's flagship, General Strux sat in stunned silence, his claws gripping the armrests of his chair. The other Council officers around him exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence in humanity's supposed weakness now shattered. Councillor Jurek broke the silence, his voice low and filled with uncertainty. "We were wrong, completely wrong. The Terrans, they've been hiding this strength from us all along." Strux's jaw tightened, his pride wounded by how gravely he had misjudged the humans. "They've played us," he growled, his voice thick with resentment. "They let us believe they were weak, diplomatic cowards, but this is something else. They were waiting for the right moment to reveal their true power." Jurek nodded slowly, his gaze drifting toward the viewscreen where the Terran fleet hovered like silent sentinels. "And now they've shown us what they're capable of. But why hide it for so long? What are they really after?" Before Strux could respond, a communication ping sounded through the command center. The Terran Empire was hailing them. Strux's lips curled in frustration, but he nodded to the communications officer. "Put it through." Admiral Yara Kane's face appeared on the screen, her expression as unreadable as ever. Behind her, the command crew of the Resolute moved with quiet precision, a stark contrast to the chaos the Council's officers had just experienced. "General Strux, Councillor Jurek," Kane began, her voice steady, "the Crom are retreating. We have the opportunity to end this conflict once and for all. I recommend we pursue them while they're vulnerable." Strux's eyes narrowed. He still couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his chest ever since the Terrans had arrived. The humans had come to the Council's aid, but their overwhelming power was unsettling. Kane's calm demeanor only deepened his suspicions. "Admiral Kane," Strux said, his tone carefully measured, "your fleet's performance was unexpected. I must ask, why did you choose to reveal this level of strength now? You've remained distant from galactic conflicts for centuries, yet suddenly you are ready to fight with such precision. What is the Terran Empire's true motive here?" Kane's gaze didn't waver. "The Terran Empire values survival, General. For centuries we have watched as the galaxy waged wars, as civilizations rose and fell. We chose not to engage because it was not in our best interest to do so. Our strength comes from our ability to adapt, to learn from the mistakes of others. We didn't need to prove ourselves until now." Strux frowned. "And now? Why now?" Kane's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice growing firmer. "Because the Crom are not just a threat to the Galactic Council. They are a threat to the entire galaxy. We could no longer stand by and watch as they consumed entire systems. You called on us, General, and now we're here to finish what you started." The weight of Kane's words settled heavily over the Council's officers. Strux, though still suspicious, could not deny the truth in her statement. The Crom had been an ever-growing menace, their biotechnological weapons and relentless aggression threatening to overrun even the most powerful civilizations. Without the Terrans, the Council might have already fallen. Councillor Jurek leaned forward, his tone more diplomatic. "Admiral Kane, we are grateful for your intervention truly. Your fleet has turned the tide of this war, but we must be transparent with each other moving forward. The Galactic Council is not used to dealing with such hidden power. We need to know what the Terran Empire expects from this alliance." Kane's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained composed. The Terran Empire expects what has always expected: mutual survival. We are not here to claim territory or resources. We are here to ensure that the Krum do not destroy everything we have all built. Once the Krum are defeated, we will return to our worlds, and the galaxy can return to peace. But make no mistake, Counselor. If the Krum are not stopped here, they will not stop at your borders. They will come for us all. Strux exchanged a glance with Jurek, his suspicions momentarily set aside. Kane's logic was undeniable. The Krum were a threat that transcended individual empires and political ambitions. This was a war for survival, and the Terrans, for all their secrecy, had proven themselves to be invaluable allies. General Strux straightened in his seat, his voice more resolute. "Very well, Admiral Kane. We'll pursue the Krum together. But know this, we will be watching the Terran Empire closely from here on out. There can be no more secrets." Kane inclined her head slightly. "Understood, General. Now, let's finish what we started." The transmission ended, and the bridge of the Council's flagship fell into silence once more. Strux stared at the blank screen, his mind racing with a mixture of relief and lingering unease. The Terrans had revealed their hidden strength, but there was still so much about them that remained a mystery. As the combined fleets of the Galactic Council and the Terran Empire prepared to pursue the retreating Krum, one thing was clear: humanity had changed the balance of power in the galaxy, and whether for better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same. The pursuit of the Krum into the outer reaches of the Nestor sector was swift and relentless. The combined fleet of the Terran Empire and the Galactic Council moved with the singular purpose of ending the Krum threat once and for all. The Terran ships, with their brutal efficiency and overwhelming firepower, led the charge, pushing the Krum deeper into the void. The once feared bioengineered monstrosities of the Krum now fled in desperation, their ferocious assault having been shattered by humanity's unexpected might. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Yara Kane stood with her usual calm, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Each Krum ship that attempted to regroup was systematically hunted down and eliminated. There was no chaos in the Terran approach, no hesitation. It was a calculated, methodical dismantling of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. Captain Mira Thorne, standing at Kane's side, watched the proceedings with admiration. "We've crippled their fleet, Admiral. They won't be able to recover from this." Kane nodded slightly, though her expression remained unreadable. "We're not done yet. The Krum are like a cornered animal, the most dangerous when desperate. We'll press the advantage, but remain vigilant. They could still surprise us." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council flagship, General Strux and Councillor Jurek observed the battle from a distance. The Krum had been their most formidable enemy for years, and yet the Terrans were dismantling them with unnerving ease. Strux, who had once mocked the humans as weak, now stood silent, watching in awe. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined," Jurek whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and unease. "We've been struggling against the Krum for decades, and the Terrans, they've broken them in a matter of hours." Strux's claws tapped rhythmically on the armrest of his chair. His pride still smarted from how thoroughly the humans had shattered his preconceptions. "We underestimated them. That much is clear. But the question remains, what will they want in return for this? They've proven their power, but their motives are still a mystery." Jurek nodded, his amphibious eyes narrowing in thought. "True, they claim they're here only to stop the Krum, but no empire wields this kind of strength without ambition. We must tread carefully from here on out. As the final Crumb ships were destroyed or forced into retreat, the combined fleet regrouped. The battle was over, and the Crumb threat, for the first time in galactic history, had been neutralized. But the victory felt bittersweet to the Council. They had called on the Terrans out of desperation, and now that humanity had shown its full strength, the balance of power in the galaxy had irrevocably shifted. A communication ping sounded across the Council's bridge. Admiral Kane was requesting another transmission. General Strux straightened, exchanging a glance with Jurek. "Put it through," Strux ordered. Kane's face appeared on the screen, her expression as calm and composed as ever. "General Strux, Councillor Jurek, the Crumb have been defeated. Their forces are in disarray, and we believe they will not recover from this loss. The galaxy is safe for now." Strux nodded. There was a tension in his voice. "Admiral Kane, your fleet's actions today have saved the Council, and for that we are grateful. But we must address the larger matter at hand. The Terran Empire's strength is beyond anything we anticipated. We have relied on your power in this war, but going forward, we need to know what the Terran Empire's role will be in galactic affairs." Kane's gaze remained steady, though a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "I understand your concern, General. The Terran Empire has remained neutral for centuries, choosing not to involve itself in the political or military affairs of the galaxy. That will not change. We have no interest in conquest or domination. Our priority has always been survival, and now that the Crumb are no longer a threat, we will return to our space. The galaxy can resume its course without us." Jurek leaned forward, his tone cautious. "You say that now, Admiral, but the power you've demonstrated today, it will not be forgotten. The Council will not forget, and neither will the rest of the galaxy." Kane's eyes darkened slightly. "The Terran Empire does not seek to be forgotten, Councillor. We seek to be respected. Today was not just a victory over the Crumb, it was a message. Humanity will no longer be seen as a silent, passive observer. We have strength, and we will use it when necessary. But we will not impose our will on others unless provoked." There was a silence as the weight of Kane's words settled over the Council's officers. Strux, though still wary, found himself begrudgingly nodding in agreement. The humans had proven their worth, but they had also made it clear that they would not be easily manipulated or controlled. Jurek cleared his throat, his voice softening. "Then perhaps we can move forward with a new understanding. The Galactic Council and the Terran Empire as allies, working toward a common goal of peace and stability." Kane's expression remained neutral, though there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Perhaps amusement, perhaps something deeper. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "But let's not forget, Councillor, that peace is not something to be taken for granted. It is something you must be willing to fight for." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in a contemplative silence. Strux stood from his seat, his massive frame casting a long shadow over the bridge. "We've seen their strength now," he said, his voice low. "And we'll have to keep an eye on them. But for now, they've earned their place as our allies." Jurek nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "Yes, for now." As the Terran fleet turned back toward their home systems, the galaxy shifted in ways no one had expected. The Crumb were defeated, but a new era had begun, an era where humanity's place in the stars was no longer questioned. They had proven their strength, their resilience, and their ingenuity. The Galactic Council, once the dominant force in the galaxy, now had a reckoning to face. And as the Resolute vanished into the stars, Admiral Yara Kane allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The galaxy had been reminded of one simple truth: humanity was not to be underestimated.